everybody. I'm John Mason. I'm the president of the OLLI Board of Directors, and I'd like to welcome you all this morning to our arts discussion, our arts forum. This is, you may know, is our 30th year that OLLI UAH has been providing lifelong learning for the northern Alabama and southern South Central Tennessee. And our event today is the penultimate event of the celebration that we've had this year that has allowed us to showcase the talents of so many of our members. And so for those of you who are not members of OLLI but are visiting us for the first time today, please take some time to meet people, to talk to people, and to see what we have to offer. We're a family, and we promote lifelong learning and fellowship and think it's one of the best secrets in North Alabama, in Huntsville. And so we want to make this organization the preeminent organization for lifelong learning in this region. And with that, that's the kind of thing that we're hoping events like today do. So again, I'd like to welcome you all. I'm glad you're here. And I will say now that when this event's over, 2 buildings down at Wilson Hall, there'll be snacks and coffee and a chance for everybody to sit around and talk. There's more artwork to be seen up and down the halls. And so I hope you'll all enjoy it with us and have a great day. So thank you for coming and enjoy the show.
Can our artists come in now, please? Good morning. I'm Jane McBride, coordinator of this, the very first ever OLLI at UAH Art Festival. This has been an experiment in creativity on my part. I'm not an artist, but I love art. A big welcome to those of you who've come out today to join us. And again, I'm going to remind you, it's in 2 parts, the program this morning and the one in Wilson Hall. I had a large cadre of folks helping and implementing this event. It's been a lot of moving parts. There are really too many helpers to name right now, but I do want to call out Eileen Galloway, who is a member of the UAH Art Department, and Justin Clay, who is with us in the room somewhere right down front. I don't see Eileen here, I wish you were, who is in the UAH OLLI staff project. This festival could in no way have happened without their invaluable support. This program today is being recorded, as you see, some cameras in the aisles, and we are very grateful to AVO Communications for their very generous support to us. So maybe in the future you can point your friends who couldn't come to a YouTube video somewhere. We'll let you know. I'm going to ask the artist to speak as I introduce them. I'm going to ask them to speak to some of the art that will be presented on the big screen. First of all is Jahni Moore. Jahni works primarily in paint and charcoal, but often makes use of assemblage and red clay as homage to his southern Afro-Indigenous roots. He holds a Bachelor of Science and a Master of Education in Art degrees from Alabama A&M University. Also a Master of Fine Arts from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, as well as certifications from Savannah College of Art and Design and Rhode Island School of Design. He has taught art from kindergarten to the university level and exhibited all over the United States. He is the creator of numerous murals and public works from Chicago to Colombia, South America. He is now one of Huntsville's preeminent muralists. Jahni will show a little bit of your art.
Well, this piece was acquired by the Huntsville Museum of Art. It was in the Red Clay survey a few years back. It's entitled Beyond Symbolic Shrines to Thirst. Along with doing the work, I really enjoy titling the work, but I generally don't title the work until after it's actually done. I sort of let it speak to me. This piece deals with the idea of going beyond something that's symbolic into the very real. And if you notice the gold line running throughout the piece, that's one single line. And it's symbolic of our lives. We can't control anything from our past, but we have control of our future, and we can determine that. No matter how many twists and turns we have, it's still our one life, symbolized by that one line. And in these figures, I generally highlight the eyes because we see the eyes as a window to the soul. And I flatten the background, and then there's usually some symbology there. In this one, there is the blood, which is a symbol of life. This is done in the same style. And by the way, I call this style gold mapping because we don't think about it like this often, but every day that we live, we think about our futures and our present. We're actually mapping out our lives. So much like you travel from place to place, our lives sort of go along that continuum. This piece is called the Annunciation. It's about anticipation of something that you definitely don't understand, but you're willing to go into. So you see the look on this young woman's face. And the base of this, the background behind her, that's actually painted with Alabama red clay, which I use a lot in my work. Next. So here we see a piece that's pretty much done entirely with the Alabama red clay. I started doing that years ago, playing around with it, dyeing clothing, fabrics, and experimenting, because if you grew up in the South, you've experienced this red clay getting in your clothes and not coming out. So I even said our feet got dyed by it sometimes. And I had gone somewhere, actually it was Stovehouse, when they were in the process of surveying the property. And I pulled some of the red clay, actually it was dust. When the gentleman and I walked beneath one of these awnings, probably hadn't seen rain for years, 100 years or so. And it started rising up around us like some spirits. And I was really impressed by it. And I asked him if I could have some. He said, sure, take all you can get. And so I filled up a small container with the red clay, and I kept it with me. And I started to play around on paper with it and things like that. And that sort of morphed into this. And when I'm painting with the red clay, it feels like I'm painting with a living substance. And it points back to something I was told by one of my professors in undergrad. She said, this Alabama red clay is rich with the blood of your ancestors, so your success is inevitable. And I received that. So this piece is called Beyond the Temple of My Familiar. Next. And so this is one of my murals, one of my larger paintings. This one is on, this is a portion of it, a detail of it. It's on display in the education building at Alabama A&M University, and it's entitled Birth of a Nation. And of course, you can look carefully. You see in the center, you have the children, which represent our future. You have the hands. You think about the idea of a farmer holding seeds. That was the idea behind this. And you see a lot of different things happening in the background, the symbology, too much to discuss in the moment. And it's like he's bringing forth these children from the womb, from this red clay earth of Alabama.
Thank you. Jennifer Stottle Taylor is an award-winning, internationally known Impressionist artist. She's traveled to Europe, Guatemala, Mexico, and India for art residences and to paint plein air, as well as to teach art. She has always been an artist, drawing from life as long as she can remember. But she chose art as her profession only in 2010. She has painted subject matter with animals, landscapes, figures, and still life. She has participated in competitions and shows across the country. Her art reflects that she says more with fewer brush strokes and with a minimal color palette, usually just 4 colors and white. Jennifer.
So Impressionism usually involves light and the quick essence of life, quick brushstrokes. This is an example of a recent painting I did, an example of something you might do plein air. This was not done, this one happened not to be done plein air. But you can see all the large brushstrokes. I've actually got this in the Wilson Hall if somebody would like to look at it up close. But this is when I took a picture right after it was still juicy. But as you can see, on this big giant screen, you can see the brushstrokes really well, but if you stand way back, it's when you can see something and then you come up and see the brushstrokes. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. So I paint a lot from life, and this is an example of a floral that I had, and we did in class. I teach art also. And so it's taken years to become this way because I used to be a realist, and I loved Impressionism, and I kept thinking, how am I going to get there? And literally, I'm blind. If I take off my glasses, that's how I need to paint all the time because everything gets just blobs, and that's what I'm looking for, to get these colors. If you can get the color and value correct, the painting will come together. But as you can see, this was the example. This is the quick brushstrokes. It's taken years to be able to get to that point, but the painting actually didn't take that long. I actually have this one in Wilson Hall also. I also love to do, this is an example of another still life on the right, still impressionistic, but it's a little more realistic. But there are fewer brushstrokes in that. I love the disappearing lines. That's something that I try to do in Impressionism, to give less for, let the viewer make up some things. So, and the chicken on the right, this chicken I've painted several times, it's a French chicken. And he comes from Manoir, France, and his name is Manoir. And he's an example of something that I saw a lot out west, my farm animals, and this is an example of one of them. But again, quick brush strokes, just quick, energetic brush strokes. That's what I'm after, and that's what I love about this piece. Okay, and then now there's another side of me. I've been drawing horses since I was old enough to hold a pen or pencil. And I'll have to tell you I didn't start really taking art lessons till an adult, probably in the late 1900s, or 1990s, 1990s. And I had an art teacher who would come in and she'd go, I'd bring a horse in to paint. Every time she goes, can't you find something else other to paint than a horse? I go, maybe. So I brought in a tree next time. But horses are part of my life. They're part of my soul. And I happened to paint a painting one time. I was just dripping paint on a canvas. And these faces started to appear. And I called they look like horses. And these drippy legs came out, and I called it the secret horses. And so they've been on and off part of my curiosity. And something I work on over and over again, and I revisit the secret horses a lot. And I only have one piece right now left, which is in the Wilson Hall. But I do have more desire to do these. This is a creative side of me, I think, that I want to push further and further. How far can I go? It seems to be popular. People love this type of artwork, so I think that's all.
Thank you. Katrina G. Weber has drawn and painted since childhood, but did not make the transition to full-time artist until 2002. She has taken many workshops from nationally acclaimed master artists and has had more than a dozen solo exhibits. She has been accepted into numerous national, regional, and local juried shows where she has won many awards. Her paintings hang in homes across this country. Painting has led her to a heightened awareness of beauty in nature all around her, and painting outdoors or plein air is one of her greatest pleasures. Katrina?
So Jane just said that painting outdoors is one of my greatest pleasures. This piece is a plein air piece I painted it at St. George Island. There's a wonderful state park there, off just part of Florida. My sister is also an artist, and for many years we took painting trips together, and this is from one of those trips. And we would sometimes take along an art book that we were particularly inspired by. The book that we had with us this year, that I painted this painting, was about the Canadian group of 7. They do very marvelous expressionistic work, and I sort of channeled a little bit of that when I painted this painting. It's the dunes in the park at St. George Island. So when I'm not outdoors painting, which actually I do less now that I've gotten a little older, and the backpack that has all my supplies in it weighs about 20 pounds, and I don't do quite as well with that anymore. So painting in the studio is painting from life in the studio is the next best thing. And I have a garden. I love gardening. And these flowers are all from my garden. So a lot of times in the summer, you'll find me in my studio, which is right by my garden. I'm lucky enough to have a studio next to my house. I think Jennifer said something that is true of a lot of us who paint realism. We start out trying very, very hard to paint realistically. And at some point, we feel like we're mastering that pretty well. And then we want to move on beyond that. And this painting shows some of that too. Lost edges, she talked about, where you don't where everything's not crystal clear and photographic, and just exaggerating some of the shapes and sort of letting your emotions and your own reactions to things enter into the painting. This one, so right now I normally paint in oils, but I have also done watercolor and pastels. And this particular painting is pastel, and it's an example of how pastel, as much as I love oil and as much as I love watercolor, pastel is a type of drawing, really, because you've got a stick in your hand, and you can make big, bold gestures that it's harder to do. I mean, you can do that with the other media, but pastel lends itself to this. And this is, I did it from a photograph, but it is near my home. It's the woods in autumn on Bankhead on Montesano. And traveling, Jennifer talked about all her travels. I don't get to do as much as I would like, but this is from a trip to the Grand Canyon. It's one of my very largest pieces. It's about 30 by 40. And this one, as well as the previous flower, well, no, the flower picture are both in the exhibit at Wilson Hall today. Here too, I base my art in real life for the most part. I've done some abstracts, but usually I start with nature one way or the other, whether it's human or the woods or landscape. But I try to let myself express feelings and emotions and exaggerate some things. And so that's it.
Okay, thank you. We will take a few questions from the audience after the panel discussion, question and answers get finished. And if you would please hold those questions until Steve Johnson gives you the time to speak. I want to introduce Steve Johnson, Our moderator of this discussion, he is a familiar face to most of us at Channel 19 WHNT. For nearly 47 years as sports director, news reporter, and anchor, he is the current co-anchor of the weekday morning news. Many of you have breakfast with him, I heard you say. An avid art collector, he has served 2 terms at the Arts Huntsville Board of Directors, and with his wife, chairs the art marketplace at Panoply of the Arts. He is fond of telling people that he is a lifetime learner, and so we at OLLI will be soliciting him in retirement to join us for continuing education. I think that's it. I'm going to turn it over to Steve.
I am uniquely suited to do this. By the way, you're all invited to Panoply. I hope I will see you in the art marketplace. I'll be there the whole time. We're going to have that. We got 3 people and they're way over there, but we're going to do this as kind of a discussion. Every question, I hope that everybody will talk about. And I'm hoping that some of these questions are things you'd actually like to know. And I think we're going to start, and Jennifer, you get to start this one. And start is a good word, because how did you get started in art? Did you go to art class? Did you look at other people's art and say, I could do that? Or did you just always know that you were an artist and you created when you were a little kid? I mean, how did you get started?
Can y'all hear me on here? No, because I turned this off. Oh, there, it's back. It was given a feedback, so I turned it off. Great question. I've told people I was born with a pencil in my hand because I always loved to draw, and my favorite thing to get for Christmas would be art supplies or a saddle for horses. So that's the only thing I ever wanted. So I have always been an artist. It wasn't encouraged to get an art degree in my family, so I got a business degree from UAH, and also took art along the way. But I would take art from classes periodically, and I'm one of those appreciators so much of art that I get lost in the gallery and people wonder where I am, and I might go with a group and she's gone, I don't know where she is. So I love art. It is a passion, and it's become, I'm a little bit like Katrina there, where I picked other people that I really, really love to take art from, and I go, I want to paint like that person. And I'll take their workshop. It's kind of a fast track almost to getting from point A to point B. I'm envious of Jahni's education, because I would love to have gone to like Savannah's a College Art of Design, or a art school. If I had gone back in time, I might have done that for sure. But I've just pursued it.
Okay. Jahni, how about you? Turn your mic on.
Well, I think I was a student of nature first. As a child, I was always outside. The flowers, the trees. I remember climbing my first tree at age 4 and seeing the top of the house, and then I could see the other houses. I remember watching my sister come home from school with her friends, and everything about nature I loved. It wasn't until years later that I even understood what the idea of art was. It's just something I always did. And speaking with friends as I've gotten older, they remember more stories than I remember. They said that I was always drawing. I don't remember always drawing, but I'm sure I was. Or making something. One told a story about when I built this, they were building these popsicle stick rafts, and I built a Noah's Ark replete with animals and everything. And I do remember that. I just remember the idea of wanting to create something, wanting to bring something into existence. It was very strong for me. So that's the first I remember. Now, one thing that sort of cemented things is a story that I share, and it probably came before I had any idea what was taking place. We were living in a small house in Northwest Huntsville, and I was home with my mom because I was only 4 or 5 years old. And I got in trouble about something which was pretty frequent. and she put me in a corner. And I remember sitting in this corner and looking at these white walls, and back then it seemed like every house had white walls. And I must have found a crayon or something I drew on the wall. And it was something about seeing that mark. I can't remember all the details of it, but I can still feel the feeling of being able to pull my hand away and look at something and say, I did that. And so I got in trouble for that, but what's crazy about it, I did it again. And I'm not sure if I went past that because she had a way of making me do something different. But
Okay.
And that's why I tell parents, if you watch your children closely enough, watch them very closely, they'll let you know what they're going to do. And if my mom had only known that at some point I would make my living drawing on walls and making mark making, maybe she would have seen that a little bit different.
You would have moved to another house.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Katrina, how about you?
Well, I also loved art from the very beginning. I mean, I didn't think of it as art, but I also drew and was so pleased when I got my first watercolor set for Christmas or my birthday. We had a lot of art in the house. I have a great uncle who was a famous artist in Germany, and we had a lot of his paintings, and my father was very interested in art, and there were art books, and so that sort of filtered into my being, I'm sure. I did well at school. I won some awards in school, and my art teacher encouraged me to go to art school, but like Jennifer's family, my family didn't encourage that. So I sort of had a hiatus a number of years where I did other things, went into the scientific world and got a PhD in experimental psychology. But eventually I was so happy to go back to my right brain. You know, they say the right brain is the artistic one, the left brain is the scientific or mathematical and logical one. And I'm very happy to wander around now, forgetting things and being unmethodical.
I wanted to add something because I just taught a class on creativity, and some of you I see were in my class. It was an OLLI class. And something Jahni said was making that mark. I mean, I've always heard that art is nothing but mark making. You know, that's what you're doing, and it's really intense. But the class that I taught too, there was a study done by George Land that proved that all of us are born creative geniuses. And after 5 years old, when we start getting the structured learning, we lose that every year. And when we're adults, only maybe less than 10% of us are creative geniuses. But the good news is we can get back to that. So you just have to.
So I still have a shot, right?
You have a shot.
Okay. All right. Now, you kind of answered this by being here, but do you remember ever having fear of putting your art out there in front of the public, in front of other artists? And do you ever have that now? Who'd like to start?
You want me to start? You want to start? Okay.
Well, the short answer is no. And I think that's because I never thought about it. You know, it's like the cricket chirps, the lion roars, the dog barks. It's just what I did.
Yeah.
So I didn't think about it as something separate from who I was. Now, when people started to name it, oh, this is art. That's the boy who can draw. And then I saw it in that context. But as far as having a fear of putting it out there, in fact, I would much rather draw than speak most of my life.
Yeah.
You know, I would rather let the art go and speak for me. Even sometimes now, I like to allow the art to speak, but I know it's necessary for the artist to also lend his or her voice. But as far as the fear of it, I've never known it.
Katrina?
You want to go next, or you want to?
Sure. I appreciate what Jahni's saying, and in a way that's true for me. I'm almost, especially at this point, I'm very happy to have places to exhibit my work and share what I've done with other people. I'm sort of a hermit and don't really go out that much. And I create for myself. I mean, I think every creative artist has to paint for themselves first. But it's so important to get affirmation from other people. And when I do show my work and people like it, it's really affirming, and it gives me the energy to go back and create more. Fear, I guess there have been times when I wasn't sure of myself. It sounds like Johnny's always, he's got this creative drive, and he feels so strongly about it that he's sure of himself. Sometimes I do paintings and I think, did I really hit the mark with this or not? And so, yeah, there's some trepidation sometimes.
Yeah. Jennifer?
Okay, so I'm going to comment on what Katrina said first, is that I call that the unicorn. When you paint something and somebody else loves it, you love it and they love it, that's the unicorn, because everybody's happy. And then I'm like, Johnny, I never was scared because I was the girl that could draw. They were in kindergarten, they were like, draw me a horse, draw me a dog. And but I do have to tell you something, because I do a lot of experimental art, which you don't see now. But I had painted this scene. It was called The Beginning of Time. And it was a kind of a part of that Big Bang Theory, and it had 3 horses aerial view, and they were creating it was like God went boom, and these horses, the primary colors are making the world, and it had seasons all around the outside. And I took this piece to Memphis. They had wanted me to do some murals on a wall for a movie or something, but I took this piece, and the guy looked at that, and he wanted to buy that piece. And I gave him a price, and at that time I said $1,500, and he said, he tried to drop the price, and I said, that is my soul on that painting right there, and you're trying to cheapen my soul? The guy gave me $1,500 for my painting.
Okay, I'm skipping a question I had. I know an artist who would have dinner parties at her house, and in the middle of the party she would say, sorry, excuse me, I have to go paint. I'm inspired. So she would leave the group and go paint. So I guess, when are you inspired, and what inspires you? I mean, does everything inspire you, or is there something maybe you don't even always know what it is that inspires you? Jahni?
I'm smiling because I think I'm always inspired.
How did I know you were going to say that?
And the only thing I can compare it to is that child that wanders to the front door and looks out there and sees all that. He wants to get out there. And that's kind of how I see life. If I'm driving down the street, I asked a friend of mine, I was looking at wildflowers coming up, the dandelion blossoms, and I was talking about how beautiful they are. And she said, oh, those are just weeds. And I looked at him thinking, wow, is that what you see? Just weeds? Those bursts of sunshine sitting down but I realized that a lot of people, that's how they see things. They don't see life in the living color, or they have not allowed themselves to see the life. So I'm inspired by the sunset, the sunrise, the lack of sun. It's just life itself. And I could say something to somebody, they can say something back. It may be a smile, a twinkle in the eye, the purse, the shoes. There's always something. But I think that's about how I've trained my eyes to be. And my children are always saying that you're going to take everything that's negative and twist it to a positive. Well, and they get bothered by that. But I can't not do that.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to go through something negative and not get something out of it. There's got to be something in this for me, something that's going to serve in some form or fashion. So that's how I live it.
All right, Jennifer?
I love that. I've always heard habit is better than inspiration. So, and I need it, because sometimes I want to fly away and do something else, or I may be distracted over here, and I have something on my wall that says, the muse is going to find you if your butt is in the chair. So, So I need to be, in my studio painting, and it's true. But, so I will say that I love inspiration. They also tell you, somebody said one time when they're driving down the road and something that breaks your neck, to look around, that's what's inspiring you, that's what you need to paint. So, yeah.
Katrina?
Yeah, I too, every day there are things that I see that make me want to rush to the canvas if I'm not there. And it's light and plants and people and you name it. There's beauty everywhere. And I think one of the really neat things is that the more I have painted, the more years I have spent painting, I think the wider my eyes have gotten to see the beauty of it. And if somebody chopped off my arms tomorrow and I could never paint again, just the ability to see and to appreciate and feel the awe at the beauty of our world is something that my art has given me.
Okay, I know a little bit more about this from the writing direction, but writers very often lose their muse. You mentioned that word, suddenly they can't think like they want to think. The creative impulse just isn't, they just can't retrieve it. So do you ever hit a wall, ever lose your muse? I mean, and it could be for a day, it could be for a week, or does it ever happen to you guys, Katrina?
Sure it does, and it's sometimes it's just physical. I just really don't feel like dragging myself out there, and especially when it's cold and my studio, is more unheated than heated. But I have read and heard over and over again that the muse doesn't necessarily come to you unless you're there. And so there are days when I make myself go out there, and it doesn't take long for me to look around at the many unfinished pieces that I always have in my studio, or to leaf through an art book, or to look back at a few photographs that I've taken recently to get excited again. It just happens. So.
All right, Jennifer, I want to add, you're probably going to answer this anyway, but when you do hit a rough patch, what do you do to get it back?
So does anybody know that yoga move where you stand on your head and put your knees on your elbows? I actually do that in my studio. I look at my painting upside down and let all the blood flow from wherever to my head. But, I try other things. You can jump on a trampoline. I have a little trampoline in my studio. Something to get my blood flowing. That's really what I do. And then if you want to come see some walls, just come into my studio. I've got a lot of paintings just sitting there that's been there for years that I go, finally, I might get out and paint that. But that's what I do.
Yeah, I do hit those rough patches. Some days I just don't want to go to the studio. I don't want to do the thing, and oftentimes it has more to do with the project than the inspiration behind it. But I play. I keep bubbles. I keep toys in my studio, and I play. When my students, I kept toys in my classroom, and they would come to some type of block. I would say, take a break, get the remote control car, get the Ninja Turtles. Because there's something about that childhood is unlimited. No child runs into a block. I can't figure out what to go do. No,
Right.
as a child, they'll make swords out of sticks. They'll figure out something. So that's what I do now. I'll play, and luckily I have a 10-year-old daughter who's always ready. So we'll go outside and we'll do something. But some days I'll take a day, which is rare though. I'll just spend the time playing. I think that triggers something.
Okay, another artist I know who no longer lives in Huntsville was constantly changing style and subject matter. Different, painted with watercolor, then did encaustic, then went to oil, and changed subject matter. Got out of actual two-dimensional art when they moved out of town, and now they're back in it, so I've been told. I'm just curious, do you ever get tired of what you're doing and think, I got to do it a different way? Does that happen to you guys? Jennifer?
Me? Okay, yeah. Well, so I do paint a lot of different styles, and I have done sculpture and mosaics and lots of other things. And yes, I do get tired of doing the same thing over and over again. That's one reason why, well, you almost feel like you accomplished something, and now it's time to move on and do something new. I don't know if y'all feel that way, but, you know, anyway, I'm constantly learning. I want to do something better or be better at this or express more of my inside self versus, so I'm on a kick right now where I want to do a lot of imagination, but yet also a little bit abstraction and still keep it expressionistic. So I don't know where that'll go or what I'll look like next year, so.
All right, Jahni?
Well, there are those key things that I do that I sometimes get tired of, and generally those are the things that feed me physically. But
Yeah.
the things I never get tired of are the things that feed me mentally and spiritually, because I'm always searching. I get to experiment there. But when you have an audience, generally it's a particular thing that they want from you, and sometimes I do get a little bored, I guess, with that at times. But the other stuff, I mean, that's a never-ending thing for me. It's always something else to do.
All right, Katrina?
Sometimes when I'm working on a piece that's getting near completion, but it has parts that I'm not happy with, I get not a feeling of revulsion, that's too strong, but I find myself going in there and wanting to do anything other than work on that one piece. And sometimes that'll take a while to work through. I can paint other paintings, I can, work on other things, but I need to put that on the shelf for a while. And if you have a deadline, you can't always do that. And those are the unpleasant times when you just have to keep going on something, even when you're not ready to. But overall, one of the wonderful things about art is that there are so many directions to go, so many different styles to try. So many media. I wish I had more time to do pastel again. I wish I had time to get back into watercolor, although that medium can be tricky, and if you haven't done it for a while, I think it's a little harder to get back into. But it's like every time you feel like you've made progress and you've sort of reached a new stage of what you've learned in mastering your craft. It's like you look up and there's another mountain to climb, and it's wonderful. You can
Okay,
always
this
learn
is a
again.
question everybody might not want to answer, and once again, I'm coming at this a little bit more from writing, but how do you feel about your older works? And if you want to answer this, I mean, there are some writers who can't even stand to look at their first books. Don't want to see them, don't want to hear anybody ask, they don't want to be asked questions. Do you feel good about the art you first sold and is out there, or do you, I sure am, I wish I was better then, or something? I mean, does anybody have feelings about that?
Yeah, I would like to say, a lot of times people that have known me for a long time have said, "You've gotten so much better." And I appreciate that, and in some ways I have. I certainly know a heck of a lot more about mixing paint, and I've learned to do more expressionistic paint than some of the paintings than some of the earlier that were more photographic. But I have to say that some of my very early works, I prize them, and I wouldn't change a thing about them. Sometimes I think that there was that fresh, unadulterated artistic expression, which through having taken a lot of workshops and, just the process of keeping on going, I'm not always that fresh anymore. So the answer is yes and yes, or no and no.
I feel sorry for some of the first pieces hanging on people's walls, because it might, not because maybe the picture or whatnot, I didn't know my process, I didn't know how to paint in oils, and they're probably flaking off the walls, is what I'm thinking. I don't know. But because I have seen one that someone had, and I went, wow, that really looks old, because it was cracking. But no, some of my older art pieces I'll look at and I go, where did that person go? I don't know where she went. But I think because I changed my art, I love learning. I think it's a stepping stone, and I look back and go, thank you. Thank you for going through that stage so that I can get to this stage. So.
Well, for me, it's not so much of the pieces of work, but the time period surrounding the work.
Yeah.
Like I'll look at a piece that I may still have or that I sold a long time ago, and I'll remember that, man, I was broke and struggling, and it just didn't feel good. And the piece came out, but it's what surrounds the piece. Usually the piece I'm okay with, because I know it's a progression, like being, 8, then 12, and then 15, then 20. But at the same time, it's what surrounded the work, the time period, that usually touches me differently.
Okay. All right, we'll step outside ourselves here, yourselves. What moves you in a work of art by someone else? And I mean, you're involved with your own art, but you see art. I mean, you have to. You're at art shows, art galleries. What moves you? And I mean, maybe a lot of things move you, but what is something you think, I always like it when this happens or when they do this? What would that be? Jahni?
I think it's an energy. I can't really put my hands on it. I can look at things like, design and form and rhythm and all those elements of art and design and say, this is what makes a good painting. But in general, it's what it makes me feel. That's what when I look at a piece of work, whether a child did it or, it's a work by some famous artist, it's generally what the energy that comes from the work, how I feel with it or from it.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I would totally agree with Jahni. And for instance, when he put his piece up there and you explained how it's one line going through there, when I learn too more about an artist and more about a piece, that makes me really excited about it. But I've as I teach other people, and artists are wondering, what do I paint? Because I think young artists, and I'm going to say young artists, I don't care how old you are, but a beginning artist is always wanting to paint everything they see. And I will turn around and say, you know what, paint what you love. Because, and a lot of times people don't know what they love. And I have found out artists that I love are painting things that they love. And and I'll ask them, go to the museum, and when you walk up to a piece, where are you feeling it? Is it here? Is it in my heart, or is it in my gut? Does it push me? Does it pull me? I think asking questions. You've got to ask questions and know your answer, and be attentive to your own self. But I think I love a lot of art, and I think what attracts me is sometimes the mystery behind how did they get to this point? Where did this guy come up with this image? What, your history too with the line. I love symbolism. I don't know. I hope I answered that question. But
Katrina?
Yeah, I see a lot of art that I love. I really wish I lived or could travel to some of the larger cities that have the big museums. So a lot of what I see is either local or it's online. I know that color is very important to me, and I respond to what to me feels like wonderful color mixes. But it's really hard for me to identify. Maybe I'm just not, I don't tend to be analytic enough. I just love certain paintings, and they can be all sorts of different styles and different types, but there's just something in there that I respond to, something unknown.
Now, my assumption is some of you are artists. You probably have not passed the fear of showing it to other people yet, but I bet a lot of you are artists. Some of you might even be thinking, I think I'd like to paint. They've got classes where I can do that. So what I'd like you three to do is, what advice would you give somebody who is a budding artist, would like to paint, has done it a little bit, they really like it, but they're just a little, they don't know what they ought to do with it. What advice would you give, Jahni?
Nike said it best. Just do it.
Don't think.
Just do it. Yeah. Just start where you are. I mean, just take what you have and do what you can with it. And suspend ideas of judgment because in comparison, in fact, that's what makes a lot of our lives feel the way they are because we're comparing. So if we can pull ourselves out of that comparison and realize that you're the only you walking around on this planet, even in this cosmos. So whatever you create is going to be uniquely yours. So just go from there and make it happen. Allow it to happen.
Katrina?
I certainly agree with what Jahni says. I would say that if you want to do it, try it, and if you love the process of it, even if you're disappointed maybe with the results, if you keep doing it and if you enjoy it, then you're going to get better and you're going to like what you do more. So it's a process that's ongoing.
I'm going to say, too, I agree with both of my fellow artists, but also to structure it a little bit, because we can get frustrated. Our brain wants an endorphin going off, we want to finish a painting and be happy with it. But my suggestion is to pick one maybe artist or one style or one something and really kind of master that. Put your 10,000 hours on that before you move on to something else. So don't get frustrated, start small and just focus on that, because we can get, I don't want to say that quote because that's a bad quote, but I'm sure my art students might know it, but everybody's got an opinion, and don't listen to everybody's opinion and only listen to your own self. But I would definitely suggest picking somebody you love or your art that you love and stick with that for a while. My rule used to be a year. Stick with that one process for a year before I train my brain something else, but we all learn at different stages.
Okay, and
So-
does anybody want to tack, or do you have something else you want to say?
I wanted to tack onto that, and that all depends on your intent. What is your intent? Is your intent just to do this for you to enjoy, or are you trying to enter shows, or do you want to end up in museums?
Yeah.
All of those call for something a little bit different. The basis is the same. You got to do the work, but if you're trying to get in museums, yes, certain things got to be in place. Now, if you just want to create art for yourself, for your family, or just to feel good, no, you don't need permission for that. You don't need
That's
to
right.
have all those different rules. If it feels good, roll with it.
Okay, anybody I just thought of a part B. Should anybody who is an artist or wants to be an artist, should they paint for themselves or to show other people? Or are those both the same thing?
Everybody needs to read the book Habits of a Happy Brain. Our brain, we're natural human beings, and we have monkey brains, and we want to do things because other people enjoy it too. And that's something that is ingrained in us as human beings. But I would disagree with that. I'm not disagree. I would just say we need to override that system in our brain and do it for yourself. Do it for your own pleasure, because if you're not enjoying it, if it's stressing you out, then go play golf,
You apparently don't play golf. Ain't nothing relaxing about that.
I can't play golf, so that stresses me out a little bit.
Katrina?
I don't really have much to say to that. I'm lucky enough that I never had to make my living
Yeah.
painting, or I was pushed away from trying to do that. So I do, to me, it seems it's really important to paint for yourself. If you're trying to get somewhere, you've got to like it yourself first, or your heart won't be in it, your passion won't show.
Well, we talked about fear in a different way, but making a living as an artist, that's got to be a little scary, because you're taking it on faith, I think, that I think it's good, but other people have to think it's good, and they have to want to spend their money. I mean, was that a hard thing to do, to make you to move to that? And Jahni, I know you said you're making your living, and Katrina, you're making your living. I mean,
Well, one of the reasons, I like to eat every day. So, and my children also like to eat. But it's a decision you're having to make. I know a friend of mine was writing a book. I don't know if you ever finished it. but it was called Your Art and the Art You Eat By. And there can be a distinct difference. In some cases, it can be the same. But I had to think it through, and you have to be methodical. I'm going to be in the studio, just like when I had a 9 to 5, I was there every day doing the work. In my studio, I have to be methodical and be in there doing the work. Now, some days I may take a break and go get some inspiration, quote unquote, but at the same time, I have to be about that work because in deadlines, contracts, and you're probably 50-50 on the business side and on the art side. But once you begin to look at the business as an art form in and of itself,
Yeah.
it makes it much better.
I'm just curious, does it change it, and the next person, Jennifer, does it change the way you look at what you do when you're painting to sell?
Yes. So I was going to add something to what you said, but now I'm thinking of what you asked me. It does change because there's art that your art and art that you eat by. And I had a friend tell me that I was, and they were a successful porcelain artist here in Huntsville. And I said, can you help me focus on my art? Because I have the art on the wall that I love, and I want to experiment, and I want to just be in the studio and just do the experimentation. And he looked at me and he said, Jennifer, you need to look at this art as art that's paying you to do the art you love to do. And I went, oh, wow. That makes sense. So, because I did a lot of commissions. I started off actually in portrait commissions and pet commissions and did that for years and got so sick of it, I guess. I'm sorry if I've got artists that I've painted pets for out here. I love you. But I got tired of it, and I was wanting to do my own art. So, yes, I think there is a difference, and you have to realize as an artist, because we are creative, we're trying to live in the right side of our brain and be all joyful and happy and positive all the time, but you do have to eat. And I've chosen also to teach, and that has helped have a steady income. I know you've taught before, and I don't know if you teach.
I've taught a little bit, but
Yeah.
just one-on-one, a few students.
And I have found out that even teaching, it changes your art because you're wanting to help them learn something. So you're, increasing your learning to help them. And, it's all big. It's fun. I would never change what I've done, though, to choose art over a corporate career. I would never change that.
Okay, Katrina?
I am influenced by what people may want to buy, but it's more a matter of subject matter. I can't say that I paint differently when I'm going to have a show. I try to paint, or I do paint what I want, and I don't know. I do have to say, when a painting sells, I recently had a painting sell from one of the galleries that I'm in of cotton fields, and I hadn't painted cotton fields in years now. It was an older painting, and I suddenly thought, oh, cotton fields, yes. People are interested in these. But also, it was almost like it just gives me permission to revisit something again. So it was partly for what I thought it might sell, but partly also it just inspires me when people buy.
Do I have time to add something to that?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
So I have a friend, artist friend, she's in California, Peggy Kroll Roberts, and I love her work, but I was listening to her speak to a group much like this one, and she said she was doing art, and they were on the beach, and a whole group of people, and I think it was like a workshop or something, and so she was watching people, and she goes, oh, the beach, everybody loves the beach, I'm gonna go paint beach. And she went over there, and she said, just didn't feel right. And then she goes, she saw a group of people painting trees, and she goes, oh, trees, everybody loves trees. I'm going to go paint trees. So she went over there, and she said, just didn't feel right. And then, so she said, I'm just going to go over here, and I'm going to paint what I want to. And she was painting bathers, I think. And you should look her work up. It's very simple and fun. But Peggy Kroll Roberts, that meant a lot to me, because we try to chase what people want to buy from me, when actually her work is so unique and different, and everybody, she's made a name for herself because of that. So
Okay, I've been, a couple of times I've commissioned somebody to paint a particular kind of painting, or even one guy painted something, a friend bought it, but I liked it so much I got him to do it again, but I told him, don't make it quite the same. If somebody commissions you, and I know you do commissions, would you rather they say, this is what I want, you use your inspiration and make it happen? Does it bother you if somebody says, this is what I want, this is the color I want, this is going to match my living room wall and all that junk? Do you like, when you're commissioned, do you like to be able to paint from your own inspiration? Or is it frustrating to have to paint something that's more like work? Am I making sense here?
Yeah.
Whoever.
Well, I've never had to match a sofa, thank goodness. Although I love furniture. But I think for me, it's been portraits. In the very beginning, I did so many portraits. I looked at so many faces. But in essence, you're still dealing with 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth, and all that stuff. And it got boring for a while. It was literally like going to work. And so every once in a while, I have a patron who will say they want a portrait. And what I have to do is shift it in my mind to, I'm helping to cement something in history by doing this work. It'll outlive them. And that changes how it looks for me doing it. But do I fully enjoy it the way that I used to in the very beginning? No, I don't. But at the same time, I realize that it is still a part of the thing. And I think anybody would be remiss if they thought that every aspect of life was going to be fully enjoyable.
Yeah.
There's some aspects you don't like as much, but you do what you have to do in order to do what you want to do.
And they do call it a work of art, don't they?
Yeah. And Steve, I think that at some point, I wish they would change that to, why do musicians get to play and we have to work?
I don't know, has it ever worked, Jennifer, for you?
These are all great. I will say this. I used to call it whoring myself out for art because
I think you're saying something right there.
I'm saying something because because you do things, and I've had people over my shoulder, doing commissions going, her eyes are a little darker right here and her nose is just, and I'm painting while they're instructing me behind me, and I'm like, oh, shut up. So when someone tells me, and I think you mentioned Marty Poles earlier, that was one of my first commissions where his wife commissioned me to do a work for him. And she said, do it however you want to. And I said, really? She goes, yeah, whatever style you want. I go, great. That was like a breakthrough for me. It was a moment of where I could go, I can do anything I want to on this canvas with this, thought in mind. And that was much more enjoyable than anything else. But I don't do commissions much anymore, but I do some. And my commissions, I procrastinate. And because there's other stuff I want to love and do on the canvas. And so I'm doing all these things. And I know I've had customers going, she's posting a lot of work right now. Where's the painting I'm paying her for?
Katrina?
I don't have a lot to say to that.
Well, let me ask you it this way. If somebody, they say, I want one of your pieces of art, would you rather they just let you paint something, or maybe say, I like something with flowers, or would you say, I want blue flowers, red flowers, I want them in a certain color vase? Which would you rather do?
Well, it's interesting to have a task put in front of you, and it's a challenge. I do like commissions where the person has specific ideas. I could even match the color of their sofa if I like the color of their sofa, but, I won't go.
We're not interior designers.
Yeah, there are certain colors that don't please me, and I wouldn't go there. I would try to find something that harmonizes with it, perhaps. But I think I do enjoy commissions. I do procrastinate on them sometimes. I'll hit a wall and suddenly feel that deadline pushing me, and that's not nice. But it's interesting to have somebody tell you as best they can the vision of what they want, and to then try to turn that into your own.
Okay, other than the
It
fact
is
that
pleasurable when it's done.
other than the fact that all of you would like all of you to buy your art, I have a friend and he loves art, and he just could not pull the trigger in a gallery. He just could not buy, and he asked me to go with him, and he needed somebody to say they thought it was good. And he bought it then, and now he doesn't need any help. But he buys everything inside, and he can. But what is your advice for prospective buyers of art? Because many people are scared to buy. Heck, when they get home, they're scared to hang it on the wall. They don't know if they're hanging it right. But what is your advice to people who know that they like your art, they really would like to buy something, but they just don't know? What would you say?
I want to say something first because my art sells better out west than it does in Huntsville because people don't want to spend money on art. I won't say everybody, but it's hard to find somebody that wants to spend money on art. And I don't know if it's because they don't know what to buy or they think you're too expensive.
You're going to love the next question, by the way.
Okay. I feel like buy the art. So I started painting because I couldn't afford the art that I wanted hanging on, that I wanted to buy. I can actually buy that art now because I can't afford my art. No. But I do. I've got other people's art. I'm so excited. I'm collecting other people's art. I have not one piece from Hobby Lobby or Kirkland's or anything like that on my wall. As artists, we love you if you buy our art. I mean, that's one of the things. It's a part of us. We want you to enjoy it too. And also, I have offered people, take my art and hang it on the wall, and if you don't like it, bring it back. I'm not going to make you pay for it right now. I mean, just give me your address so I can come pick it up if you don't like it. But that's what I would say. I mean, put some original art on the wall. I think it's so important to support local artists. I'm going to give you, and spend that extra dime because it is an investment. It's an investment not only in the artist, supporting local business, it's supporting all local artists in the future, and also it's what you should look at beauty every day. I feel like every person should wake up and look at beauty every day, however they see that, and art is one expression of that.
Katrina?
I totally agree with Jennifer. I paint a lot of smaller pieces, partly because I want people who like my art to be able to afford at least a small piece. And a lot of times if you start with something small and you realize how much you enjoy it, you can move on and buy larger ones.
Jahni?
Advice.
Advice to a budding art buyer?
Yeah.
Buy your art?
Oh, yeah, no,
Me?
it's
No,
good.
Jahni, I was just saying, Jahni,
Yeah.
Oh, for me, well,
what would you tell them?
there's he's passed away now, but there was a poet out of Nashville, voice porter was what they called him. He would always say soap, support our artists, please. So I like that one because I haven't been an artist, but I think I'm an art collector as well. I paid large sums of money for art. And my way of looking at it is, when I look back at this 4 or 5 years from now, will I be happy that I got it? Or will I say, well, I'm glad I didn't get that, because you'll end up paying a bill that you won't ever see the results of. So I look at it that way. Also, too, not that everybody needs to see it this way, because you really shouldn't necessarily buy for investment purposes, but you can, because I've actually bought art that I've sold, bought collectible things that I've actually sold and made more money off of. But I think about the Basquiat piece that sold for less than $10,000 when he was alive. And then, not 30 years later, that same piece sold for $116 million. And that was in 2016 when it sold. And of course, Andy Warhol's nephew tells a story like that as well. Uncle Andy gave us a piece, and it meandered around the house for years. It sat behind the living room door. It was in the closet. I took it to school and left it on the bus. And at the moment, as I was listening to NPR, they had just sold the piece for $1.3 million. He said, well, do you have any regrets? He said, yeah, that we didn't get more, because they didn't see the value in it. So if you look at the value as being intrinsic, but also possibly extrinsic, Because when people require my work, I would say, well, one day you can pay your house off with that, or you pay your child's tuition with that. And it may have sounded arrogant, but it was a way of letting them know that you invested in something. You didn't just buy something. You didn't spend the money, you invested it.
Conversation I've had with artists over the years is about how they price their work. I'm always intrigued. And the only thing bad about that is you go into a gallery and you go, that's just too much for that, or whatever. But it's always, that's a subjective thing. If you really like it, I don't care how much it is, we're going to get it. But would you mind talking about how you price your art? A friend of mine who's has passed away was a watercolor artist, and he told me once that I charge what the market will bear, and if they're willing to pay this, that's what I'm going to sell it for. But how do you price your art? Katrina?
I got my, my start selling art through the Huntsville Art League. And when I started showing there, I just spent a lot of time looking at what the other artists were charging and sort of figured out how I thought I compared with them and priced my work according to that. And, you know, it's certainly a topic that I've been curious about. I've read a lot about it, and one well-known artist that I admire a lot gave the advice that once you've established a price, you should never start selling for less. He said you should price by size, and every year you should increase your prices a little bit, maybe 10% or so, and just steadfastly do that. And I haven't been scrupulous about sticking with that, but that sort of describes my system.
Yeah, by the way, Katrina, I had a local artist. I bought a couple of pieces a long time ago, and she told me, "You're lucky you bought me when I was cheap." So, yeah, but Jennifer, what do you think? How do you price?
Well, so it's true. I can sell art for a lot more in the West than I can here. You know, that I do price differently for different places, and I'll have a fire sale. I'm one of those people every once in a while because I produce so much work that I can't carry it with me. And I will have a fire sale on occasions to go, oh, you know, just to get rid of some work. And honestly, it's for you to collect it, but it's also for me to it's like cleaning a house and getting new furniture. I want to get that art out of here because I've got these other ideas in my head and I want to get it out. And, you know, I have to have room for that. So it's
Yeah.
you know, that's a good question. I mean, I think everybody should price their art how they feel, and I have gone up on my art every year, but I just reserve my high prices for places that aren't around here. If that makes, I'm sorry, but that's true.
Well, I'll speak to the murals because it sort of
Yeah.
falls in with architecture and building and things of that nature. Generally, it's by the square foot when it comes to murals. I charge by the square foot based on the complexity of the design, mural-wise. Now, in terms of the other work that I do, you know, like you say, today it's the youngest you'll ever be. The present is the least expensive the work's going to be because it is steadily going up. As everything that I do as an artist is going to increase my value.
Yeah.
So that's how I look at that.
We're going to take some questions out from you in just a second, but how excited are you that this community where you live is really going in for public art? It's not all yours, but it's all art that I think makes this town a better place to live. Does it excite you to see it?
Yes.
Yeah, it does. It does. I share with you an event that took place, something that I got started, or I did in 2019, that 2018-19, that made me decide to stay here in Huntsville. And once I saw, because I was ready to go elsewhere, I was going clear across the water to do public art. I had more public art in South America than I had in my own region. So I knew something had to change, and I was prepared to leave the area. So this particular thing helped things to shift. I saw the mayor pour more money into the arts, not just for me as an individual, but other artists, because we have UAH, who has an art department, Alabama A&M University has an art department, and Calhoun, Athens State, they all have art departments. Oakwood has an art department. Well, when these students get their degrees, where do they go? they go elsewhere because they cannot make a living here. So once again, support our artists, please. So if you want them to stay and feed this economy, they have to be supported.
Yeah.
So otherwise, why have those professions on the books here? So that's what made me happy to see that happening. And as more industry comes here, as more people, the people who come say, we need more, we need to see something different. They're demanding to see something more cultural in that respect.
And the new City Hall is going to have some spectacular artwork in it. Just keep that in mind.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that too. I'm still here and I would love to sell my art, more art here, and it's starting to happen. I think it's a slow process. I'm in a local gallery and we had a discussion about prices. I said, well, I'm more known outside of this community than I am here. And she says, we got to build your name up here. And so I think I love seeing that. I'm supportive of the arts also. I'm actually trying to maybe support the arts by creating a community of artists and art, maybe a unique thing in Monrovia area. So I hope to see that happening. We're offering more classes, and anyway, come see me at the booth. You can get an idea of that. But yeah, I'm really in support of the local artists, and
Yeah.
I love youthful people, or even, I'm in big support. Most of the people I teach are retired, and I love them seeing their second life come around, and I've had a lot of artists that I've taught that now are professional artists. And when I say professionals, they're making money with their art. And I will ask a goal of them, like, what is your goal? Do you want to pay for your supplies, or do you want to pay for your dinner, or do you want to pay for your house? So it can be done, and I'm in full support of that.
It's all been said. I agree.
Oh, okay. I hope. We have microphones. Does anybody have a question? Right up front, of course.
Hi, my name's Elroy. I'm an OLLI student. All right. Two real things real quick. Thank you for talking about early on in your lives and how you came into the art world that you are part of now. It's made me feel better about my son, who has chosen his current employment because it gives him more time to paint. I had issues with that sometimes. But out there, it appears that acrylic, as compared to oil, seems a lesser than. Why do you think that is? Acrylic on canvas. Or is it not in your perception of things?
Are you saying lesser
My son
valued?
If you had done this in oil,
I-
we would look at it more positive.
I'm not sure that's true. I think that's a naysayer. Put that person aside. But in some ways, it's true because people look at watercolor differently than they look at, and I think that's just history that's come through. But I feel like you can buy a pastel or watercolor almost sometimes as much as you could in oil. But as you know, acrylic's man-made and oil's more natural. But I think that's not true. I think that's something you just educate people. I can paint an acrylic painting and sell it just as much as I can an oil painting. For me, I don't know, does anybody else have anything to say?
Yeah.
Well, it hadn't changed what he does, but something I was curious about because he's been told this.
You have to tell them to not listen to that.
That's it. Yeah, I heard some of those things as well, but that Basquiat piece that I just mentioned, that $116 million piece, it was acrylic. And you've had, Jackson Pollock and Andy Warhol, screen printing, all those things, all those works have gone into the millions. So once again, it goes back to what his intent is. And I will say try them all. I've tried oils, I've tried watercolor. I've worked with so many different things. I even paint with Alabama red clay. So it's one of those things where you have to find what works best for you and fly in that direction.
I saw your exhibit at the Athens Calhoun, I believe it was last year.
Yes.
Is it
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, and I think to add on to what Jahni said too, and we talked about it here, the passion behind what's being put on the canvas. I think that is so important.
Come and see you, man. Oh, he's got 'em all.
I have one comment and then a question. The comment is that I've been real disappointed in our local art museum. They have great exhibits sometimes that come from out of town, but they never have a permanent exhibit of local artists going all the time. I'm very disappointed on how they support our local artists, and that's my comment. The question I have is when you are trying to become a better artist and you want to learn a certain technique and you can't find, I want to learn how to paint motion. And I'm having a very hard time finding a YouTube or a reference or something to learn how to paint motion.
Motion?
Motion. Like a dancer swirl. I mean, something swirling. I mean, you want to learn a particular technique. How do you find the reference when you're just a little person's at your house in Huntsville, Alabama, and you'd like to become a better painter?
Well, I want to address the statement first. Yes, I do agree with you on that one. And, you know, there's a statement that says somewhere, and I'm not sure where I'm quoting it from, but a prophet was without honor in his own country. And I was told that you'll get more respect outside of where you live because people just don't seem to value it as much. And like Jennifer speaking of going out west, me in South America and other places, but my intention was to remain home and keep doing it from home, because I feel that from your base, your home, you have the strongest stance. Now, in reference to the painting the motion, you want to paint motion, I'm thinking about people like Braque, Picasso. When they started doing what they were doing, there was nobody else doing it. They had to come up with that thing. That's what we do, we create. Sometimes it may not be for you to find it. It may be for you to create it. You know, if it came to you, it may be meant to come through you. So look at it in that way. But if you can find something that's close, you know, use it. But otherwise, just experiment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, ditto over here for what Jahni just said, but also advice I give people is to find maybe the top 3 artists that you has a similar type of, they could be dead, they could be alive, but find at least 2 to 3 and then combine it. You know, if you say, oh, I like this aspect of that one and this aspect of that one, that's coming up with your own self, but also getting advice. But, you know, because a lot of artists too learn from other artists as well. They either create it themselves or learn from other artists. Or D, all of the above, right? But there's a couple of people I might recommend too that have done some motion. I don't know if you've heard of, let me see if I'm gonna get his name right now. What's the fish guy? The guy that paints all the fish, Kitty, the koi fish? Derek Penix, he kind of does a lot of motion. Might be interesting. It's a little impressionistic, but he does the koi fish, and when you said that, that's who I thought of.
All right, time for one more question.
Yeah, thanks. This might just be for Jahni, but perhaps the others too. Back to Panoply. One of our favorite things is to go through the student art tent. And so first, did you exhibit in the student art tent? And then if you go through it, you know, how do you react to the works of art by the young kids?
Well, I never participated as a student, but I did have my students work there as an educator, as a teacher. And I always go. Even now I go to it. I love seeing the work, the authenticity of it, especially the younger work, the kindergartners and the first, second, third grade, because at that point, they're just creating out of the pureness of their hearts. And then you see that work become a little bit more stylized as they go and start to get the instruction, 8th grade, 11th, 12th. I look at it all the time, and I can sometimes tell that, oh, this child really wants to do this. And a lot of my students who did get into the student art tent, they've now gone on to art school, and that makes me happy a lot to see that happen. But I always go to that, and like I said before, it just brings me joy to see other artists' work, especially children's work. And what scares me a lot about that, though, is that how they will have those dreams and aspirations squashed by sometimes well-meaning people who say, well, you got to do something else, try find something to fall back on. Mm-hmm. And you know that anytime you have something to fall back on, you don't go full force for what you're looking at. You'll always know, I can fall back. So the idea that they're doing that in a safe place, I always tell my students in school, that's the safest place you're going to have doing this. And that's why I love the fact that art is still in the schools, and they have that for Panoply.
I agree. I feel like if I had started being an artist earlier, I would have been much further along now than I would. But I can't do the past, can't redo the past. Just keep going. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, and thank you.
I'm Nancy Darnell. I'm the chair of the 30th Anniversary Committee. Oh my God, Jane, congratulations. This was marvelous. I want to thank our panel, Katrina, Jennifer, Jahni. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for sharing your opinions. Thank you for sharing your art in our exhibit and in the slides. Steve Johnson, excellent job. They were the best questions. I mean, you got to the point. I'm here now just to give the thanks to Jane McBride. You had the dream for this to happen, and now we have the responsibility to make this a continuing event, I think. I'd like to thank the Artist Studio, member interest group from OLLI, all the fabulous volunteers today. There is another exhibit in the Wilson Hall Gallery. There is our OLLI member, that's our OLLI member and instructor art in the gallery. The halls are full of the Art art right now. Thank all of you for contributing. I'd like to thank my committee. I'd like to thank the OLLI Board of Directors. I'd like to thank David Moore, who is responsible for our program through the UAH Simon Library. We are in the very best place at UAH we could possibly be. I love that we have someone who wants to say yes to every question and will try to get us there. I'd also like to thank Clay. I'd like to thank Alice, Justin. You have all worked so hard to make this happen. You've worked extra hours. You've put in extra effort. You've kept your attitudes positive. I'd like to thank Annalisa, who makes sure that we get registered, answers all our questions, and holds down the fort. I'd like to thank the OLLI Social Committee, who has organized the food in the lounge that I know you're all ready to go have. I'd like to extend an invitation for any of you who are not members of OLLI, if you would be new members or returning members, please join. We make it easy. There are so many things we do that don't cost more than your annual membership. If you have some time on your hands and you'd like to volunteer, we can use you for an hour or we can use you every week. It's up to you. And at this point, I'm going to say thank you for attending. We are going back over to Wilson Hall for refreshments, stop and look at the art. I recommend that when you leave here, you go out the back of the building, unless you need steps, in which case go out the front and down and around. That'll be a longer route. But anyway, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking this time out of your Friday. We are so glad to have you, and we hope to see you again.
Like and subscribe to Hello Huntsville today on all your favorite podcast platforms. Sponsored by the Cynthia Joyner Real Estate Group, Jeff the Mortgage Guy, and Tony with T-Mill in the Morning Show.